Hey everybody, welcome to 3D6 Charge, a podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, the state of the game, and community news. We're streaming live at twitch/36charge every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, where you can follow and sub. This is episode 57, the state of the meta. I am Chris Vo, and joining me tonight is Kevin Lieb.
Howdy, howdy.
And Benjamin Rubenstein.
Hey everyone.
Yeah, so before we dive into tonight's topic, what's going on with you guys? What's new? All right, good chat.
All right, play for Kevin to go first. I guess I'll go first. On the 40k side of things, I'll start with not 40k side of things. On my life side of things, well, work started up this week. So last week was a bunch of meetings, and this week is first week with kids. So today was first day for students back, and that was a lot. On the 40k side, I've been building and painting Thousand Suns vehicles, which is a thing I didn't think I was going to be doing, and trying to hunt down Hellbrutes. So yeah, hobbying, looking at Thousand Suns, and real life is works picking back up with trying to figure out what teaching is going to look like with what is hopefully the tail end of the pandemic, but you never know because numbers are up in a lot of places.
Kevin, how about you?
A lot of work and a lot of reacting to how the Delta variant's affecting things, but not a lot of 40k in the past week, to be honest.
Okay. For me, I've just been trying to get ready. So I was able to snag they had some openings in the Goonhammer Open down in Maryland. A friend of mine told me about it, and just picked up a ticket, and I'm hopefully going this upcoming weekend. On the personal side of things, I went to a wedding last weekend, and the calls started going around today saying like, hey, this person had COVID. Also, the groom just tested positive for COVID. And yeah, I'm seeing my doctor tomorrow.
Oh, well, good luck with that.
Yeah, I'm going to be very pissed if I end up not being able to go to this GT because of some dumbass don't tread on me bullshit. I mean, I'm vaccinated, but so was the groom's mom, and she just tested positive today. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I actually was also at a wedding last weekend, so I've also had a while of not 40k.
I heard they served dinner at a very interesting time.
Oh yeah, that wedding went long.
What was the final time?
Fortunately, though, everyone there was required to have a negative COVID test before going, so I'm fairly optimistic about not getting the phone call that Chris got.
What time did they serve dinner?
Oh, 11. It was in New York too. We were planning on driving back. It went long. It was a lot of fun, but it kind of messed up my sleep schedule.
Yeah, my sleep's been messed up like this since like Thursday because of this, like the all of the subsequent things about it. Like I'm usually up at like 6 a.m. Kind of like feed my pets and take the dog out and stuff, and then I just make a pot of coffee and I'm just up. This morning I did that, and then while I was waiting for the coffee to brew, I sat down on my couch and then I fell asleep, and next thing I know, it's 8:30. Yeah.
Amazing how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
In 40k news and for upcoming events, on this upcoming Saturday, South Carolina Game Nest is going to be holding its third duos tournament. It's once again going to be a free to enter tournament with the top team getting a free month entry into the club.
Cool. And where is the club located?
Wakefield,
Rhode
Rhode
Island.
Island.
All right, so if you're in the Wakefield, Rhode Island area or nearby, grab a buddy, talk to Kevin, talk to Ben about joining this weekend's doubles tournament. Yourself a free club membership. What are the perks of club membership?
A place that you can go. There aren't closing hours, so if you want to decide it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you want to play a game of 40K, you can do so with the club provided train. There are also RPGs that go on, and pre-COVID there were regular board game days. We haven't picked those quite up in the post. Well, it's not post-COVID, but post-vaccine. So, but
Yeah, it's a pretty active gaming community, so having access to the space is kind of nice because most game stores kind of expect you to be spending money if you're going to go there, and the club's just we all chip in for rent, and then just hang out and play, do whatever you want. So it's a cool space, a lot of cool people in the club.
Cool. Yeah, I know there's like a place around near where I live where you want to play. You got to reserve space for like $5 for hours, and you get that $5 back in terms of in cafe credit to spend on drinks or like a sandwich or something. But still gotta spend it. Kevin just dropped the event link in chat. Gonna move on to topic for the night, the state of the meta.
Yes, the state of meta is kind of interesting because while we have a snapshot, I think it's going to be rapidly evolving from here for a couple of different reasons too. So while we look at factions and talk about where they are in the meta, I think it's also worth thinking about what's going to hit the meta and how the meta is going to change. And I think the two biggest things to think about where the meta is going to go from here, or the three biggest things rather, are we're going to see Thousand Suns become big. We're going to see Grey Knights. Even though these two factions are not good, they are very different. They're going to, what can and can't beat them is going to change the meta. Even if they're not top tier, they're still going to hit mid tables because there's no way those books are worse than mid tables. They may not be top tier. They might be, but again, there's no way they're worse than mid tables. So they're going to affect the meta in some way. And there's also a lot of orc models that are not out yet or are very good that people may not have a critical mass of. I don't think there's any competitive players who own 9 Record Truck Squig Buggies when the Orc Codex dropped. Some of them might now. I suspect most of them don't have them built or painted. But we're going to see Orc Squig Buggy lists become really big. And the other thing is there are several unreleased Orc kits that I think are going to have a pretty big impact on how you can build orc lists. Some GTs are reasonably saying you can't use kits that aren't out yet. You can't kit bash kill rigs or war bosses on Squigosaurs or beast bosses on Squigosaurs, whatever that ridiculous model is. And I think that both kill rigs, which that's the Psyker Knight tank that's psychic, fighty, and shooty for like 160 points. It's also toughness 8 for reasons. And then Squigosaur war bosses are both going to have a massive impact on how we see orc lists get built. And I think they're going to be very different orc lists where you're just like, oh, here's just like a bunch of toughness 8 vehicles that are psychers. And that's going to really, and characters too. And that's just going to really change how orc lists play. Those are going to be like a whole archetype of orc list that just literally can't exist yet. And I think while we go through, it's probably worth talking about, all right, here's the top factions. How do we feel are they against Grey Knights? How do we feel against them Thousand Suns? How do we feel they are against 3 kill rigs and a bunch of Squigosaur bosses?
We also have had some tournaments, not a lot, also said like, well, orcs are still on their 8th edition codex because there's not enough 9th edition codex out. I haven't heard a lot of that, but we are getting their pre-order for their official codex releases this upcoming week, so at least those will go away.
Yeah, and that probably also means we're going to get some of those kits soon.
Yeah, their initial first wave does not include any of the kits we just mentioned, but
yeah, no Squigosaurs, no kill rigs.
Does the combat patrol box have any new kits in it?
I think it's just stuff that was already in. I'm not an orc player. I'm not 100% sure. We have an orc player in chat though. I'm sure he can tell us momentarily.
Oh, he says the
Yeah.
box has almost all new kits. Actually, yeah, I'm looking at the Warhammer community article now. The only old kit in this box appears to be the Death Dread.
Right.
What's in the
But
new
by
box?
new kits, it's like it's everything is almost a redo of an old kit though. Um, there are some new options in those kits.
But
I know
nothing
for
to
the
represent
orc,
fully like a new data sheet.
right. I know though they have been like massively improved, like the orcopters.
Oh.
You do get the Mega Boss. The Mega Boss is a new guy.
Yeah, I don't. He might see competitive impacts, but I don't see him being high impact over the Squigosaur boss because they just kept turning all the dials up to 11 on that model.
The Squigosaur boss is like the difference between captains on bikes and captains in Terminator armor. It's like
No, it's so much more than that. It has 2 more toughness. It has -1 damage. It has 4 more wounds. It has like a bunch more attacks to do a bunch of mortal wounds.
yeah, that all that is true, but you know what the most important part is? The Squigosaur boss moves fast, and that's like vitally important to it.
Yeah, that's very important. I'm just still like it's not like the normal Smash character where it's like, all right, once he's out in the open, you just like kind of trivially kill it. Like it's ridiculously tanky. It's unbelievably tanky. You have to point so much at it. All right, I could rant about that model forever. Shall we? Shall we jump into our discussion of what the meta looks like, what the meta might be looking like in the future?
Yeah. So where do you guys want to start? You want to start at the very tippy top and work our way down from there, or how do you want to go about this?
Sure, top makes sense.
Top to bottom makes sense. Go ahead, Kevin.
So to start it off, we're going to be looking at the data set that includes since AdMech and Orcs have been released. We could filter it into just since Orc has been released, but there's not really enough data to say that with any confidence. The top win percentage right now is technically for Yonari. We can kind of ignore that because there's only 3 games, which pretty much means there's one person who's figured out how to play Yonari well. And it more talks about that player's skill than the faction's overall health.
Also, it was a craft road list that got registered as Yonari, so that's a different discussion. We're ignoring it. What's the actual top faction, Kevin?
Well, not too far off. Yokari.
Ooh. Okay.
Not AdMech. Yokari with a 63.5% win rate. That's not taking out mirror matches, so that number is much higher because they are a large portion of the data set. I would guess I could run the numbers. Give me a second to run the numbers, but start off. It's Yokari.
Yeah. So Yokari, we know them, we love them. They're super mobile. All of their things are still way too cheap. Not only are they very killy, they are also extraordinarily good at doing all the secondaries. It turns out all of your models are basically troop slots, infantry. You don't spend extra command points for bringing like 6 troop choices. Your troop choices can take ballista skill 2 of las cannons that reroll hit rolls. And they all go in 14-inch movement flying transports with vulnerable saves. Like, I don't know what else you could possibly want of your army. They're excellent at the primary. They're excellent at the secondary. They're so fast that you can't hide behind buildings from them. We've had this discussion before about how obscuring terrain is just heinously punishing to you unless you move 14 inches and can fly, which is, the entire army. And everything is like way too cheap. Is the big thing. They're too efficient. And we've seen some point changes. We've seen some nerfs. I suspect we'll see more in the future. What do you feel about them, Chris? Have you played against Yokari much?
I haven't. I've played I think I played one game against Yokari, and even then that was on TTS, and then like the succubus with the Triptech whip just fucking annihilated an armager.
I've caught Yokari 3 times now. I'm 2-1 against Yokari. But my list is an aberration, so that's not particularly important. They feel ridiculously pushed. There's just too many of them. You can put too much stuff on the table.
67.
Yeah, okay. 67% win rate. That's like aberrantly high. So I guess obviously they're the top tier army right now. I actually don't think they're the strongest book. We'll talk about that in a second. But something to be noted about Yokari is that their like basic build is kind of just broken, and every model in the book is extremely pushed, with the exception of some of the homunculus coven stuff. So unless you're running like a pure homunculus coven list, and if you are, that list is like fine. I don't think you're getting anything close to a 67% win rate with it, but you'll probably be like mid 50s, mid 40s. And so nothing in the book is bad. There's no model in the book that's bad. And the whole point is like their whole, like the core of their identity is that you're supposed to be playing witches, cabals, and homunculus coven together. Homunculus coven are lacking a little bit, but if you just like put the things that the book is designed to have you put into a list, your list is just insane. Like you don't have to go out of your way to build a nonsense wacky list. Like the broken list is like a bunch of Coblite warriors and raiders with some witches and an archon and Drazar, and that's just like things that all Dark Eldar players own, which artificially increases their win rate even more, because even your like average Dark Eldar player who's not trying to be mega competitive, just like wants to go to an event with their Dark Eldar, I picked up some models from my collection and threw them in a box and drove to a tournament list for Yokari is suspiciously similar to the tier 1 Yokari list. Like they're very similar collections of models. And that just makes the list even better when like the casual lists are very close to the competitive lists.
Yeah, anybody who's looking to play, anybody who's casually collecting Yokari is just going to have those core units. This isn't like AdMech where to order to be like very meta, you need to spend $300 on Ballisteri. You know, the average, casual AdMech collector might have like a box, maybe 2 of Ballisteri. They're going to have like 8 of them.
Yeah, chat's pointing out that Drakaris are sort of specialists in speed, and speed's really good in 9th edition. Yeah, they are specialists in speed, but not only are they specialists in speed, just like chat's saying, they're also kind of just like not bad at anything. Like their durability stats are not bad. They're a little on the squishy end, but like they still just have a bunch of things with the vulnerable saves. And their damage output is extremely good. So when they're like durability is like average, and their damage output is above average, and their speed's way above average, they just end up being a way above average army. And part of that too is they can bring multiple sub factions in the same list without being punished on command points, which means that in the same list they also have to be extremely versatile, because you can kind of decide where you're spending your command points in every game. Like, oh, do the witches need to be really good this game? Do the Coblites need to be really good this game? Am I jumping a bunch of raiders? Am I getting bonuses? Am I like wounding vehicles with poison shooting this game? Or do I need my witches to be rerolling all their hits and wounds and double fighting? Like you can just throw your command points at either half of your army and get that half of the army to do the thing you need it to do.
Yeah. So I think Yokari has weathered the storm pretty well in terms of like the nerfs that they've seen in other books being released, with them still being right at the top. What about AdMech?
Well, right, before we jump to AdMech, I actually want to ask you two, specifically Kevin, because we've sort of been talking over him. Kevin, how do you feel about Yokari into the 3 things that I've talked about, the things that are going to be joining the meta that aren't there yet, which is Thousand Suns, Grey Knights, and Orc lists featuring Kill Rigs and Squiggosaur bosses? Let's start with Grey Knights. How do you feel Yokari into Grey Knights look?
So Grey Knights actually have the ability to kind of like pop a raider, and then they have Storm Bolters, which is actually just the best gun against their infantry. And they all deep strike, so they can actually like get the angles that you kind of need in order to like punish Yokari. Obviously, you can only put so much into deep strike because Yokari will just kind of like come down and take over half the board. But that's a different issue. That being said, I'm still concerned that like the cheapest unit you can play in Grey Knights is 105 points, and they're often a little bit more than that.
I think a strike is 22 points, so it's 110 points for 5 strike marines.
Okay, right. It's 21 points for a Rubric Marine.
21's Rubric Marine, 22 for a strike, because the strike squads are Storm Bolters and Force melee weapons. They do all of the things good.
Yeah. And so while that makes them a lot better than like an Intercessor is in the shooting category against Yokari, it doesn't actually make them that much better in the melee category, because you in theory are spending points on things that you're not really using. That being
Yeah.
said, they all can have like chainsword equivalents
I don't
built
think they're
in.
bringing that many of those, are they?
You don't think so? The +1 attack one. I thought that
No,
was very
because that
common
one's
with.
not multi-damage though. Like they bring a couple squads of that for the rapier strat where they do a pile of mortal wounds. But like the point of that squad is it gets some point like 16 mortal wounds or something, and that's not particularly efficient against Yokari because you're just killing whatever you touch anyway.
Well, it doesn't need to be efficient because it's it's efficient because it just does the volume attacks that's good against Yokari.
Yeah. The thing is, like, you are paying a fair amount for like a bunch of dudes with strength 5, AP 3, 2 damage weapons, and then like that's the same as a marine punching you. Like 401 is the same as 5-3-2 against most Yokari units. They're just on their invulnerable save anyway, and multiple damage doesn't matter.
That's fair.
But the shooting is very good. Like the Stormbolter is like coming down at a deep strike, popping a raider with psychic powers, then blowing them with Stormbolters. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I could see Grey Knights having like maybe like a 50-50 against Yokari. I can't imagine it's much better than that. Which would help if they become popular.
What T-Suns?
I think T-Suns have a really good matchup into Dark Eldar. A lot of like T-Suns are just going to be, pooping out mortal wounds at them, which is going to just, be pretty deadly to raiders, I think, and just picking models up. And then on top of that, what I've seen in a lot of T-Suns lists over the past week is just a shitload of Soul Reaper cannons.
Yeah, that is a pretty good gun against Yokari.
It kind of depends on where we see Thousand Suns go. I know a lot of people really like the what's their name? The Terminators. The thing about the Terminators is like if you try to make a big bomb and make them super super resilient, well, Raiders hit on 3s. They're block hearts, so they reroll, so they're pretty consistent. Even if you give them the -1 spell, 4 rerolling is like a pretty consistent hit. They're wounding on 2s, and if you get the 4 Binvuln, that's pretty good. But other than that, that's like the best defense you can get. Like those big blobs are supposed to be able to like spend 3 CP and kind of say like you can't shoot into this because -1 damage is heinous against us. It turns out that like D3 +1 guns are just like still just gonna pick one up every failed save.
Yeah, so that the raiders aren't actually the thing that scare me. Like if you shoot 7 raiders at a block of like fully buffed up Scarab Cult, you're gonna kill like 2 or 3, and that's how many you can reanimate every psychic phase consistently. And Dark Eldar have no psychic interactions, so that's just happening. Like if you kill 3 Terminators, and I'm like, all right, 2 of them come back to life. That's really good for me. The thing that I'm concerned about is just like a witch squad goes into them, pops 4 command points to double fight, rerolling everything, and just kills the whole unit. Like the whole unit just dies.
It would have to be like a bride squad though, right? Otherwise, they're just always making 2-up saves.
Well, no, because you're AP1, so AP, a bunch of the special weapons are 2 damage. You have to keep in mind that like the squad leader and like 2 of the guys have 2 damage weapons, and the 6s to wound are always an extra AP anyway. So there's like a fair number of attacks in there that are just not going to be saving on 2s, and they just like don't have enough wounds to just be like, all right, like yeah, there's 3 guys in this unit. They're making like 8 attacks each, hitting on 3s, rerolling all hits, wounding on 4s, rerolling all wounds. My 6 is a wound or AP2, everything else is AP1. Like every 2 failed saves is a dead Terminator. And they're making like something like 30 of this attack per squad. Like you're just dying.
That's
Or
good.
the succubus, like a murder succubus gets into your Terminator squad, like all of a sudden they're just all dead. I think that the Terminator squads have a really bad time against the Dark Eldar melee.
How are Scarab Cults compared to Blight Lords, especially in like points cost? They're pretty similar, right? Similarly costed.
They're 40 points each. They are. They need a lot more defensive buffs in the psychic phase to be able to be comparable defensively, and they eat more command points. But their offensive power is a lot better. Their shooting's all AP2. It can be strength 5 pretty easily. They have really good melee, like 30 attacks at 5 neg 3/2.
Okay.
That being said, the Thousand Suns vehicle list might have some interesting play into Dark Eldar, because when you just like slap a 5 up vulnerable save on all your vehicles, like 7 Dark Lances is just not particularly efficient at killing like Vindicators that are like toughness 8. You need to like make them fail on average 3 saves. And like I don't know. All
Yeah,
of a sudden,
are you
that just
still
becomes a
going?
huge
You're
pain.
still going hard on Vindies and Land Raiders?
I don't think Land Raiders, but yeah, like Vindicators, Rhinos, Halberds, just like all the vehicles. Dark Eldar struggled to generate the output to kill those. And what about like the kill rigs and that? How do you feel about that?
So we once again have the problem of, while Squigosaur is like very resilient to a lot of things, turns out rerolling all wound roll, which is still kind of take it down. Like all of its defensive things don't actually work that well against them. I mean, the T7 works, but
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that all of the things you're paying for don't really function. And the same thing with kill rigs. We're like, all right, they're toughness 8, but like they only have a 6 up and vulnerable save. Dark Lances are just gonna eat them.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to what's our next thing down, Kevin?
Cult Mechanicus with a 62% win rate, and then crunching the numbers, it's actually a 64.5% win rate if you factor out the mirror matches.
Okay.
So pretty comparable with Yokari in regards to win rate. Still, I believe it was a little bit lower. Yeah. So amazingly, Yokari have come out on top again. I was actually kind of shocked about that.
Yeah. I have a theory, which I kind of talked a little about pre-show, which is that Drakari, if you just like scoop your models into a bag and show up to a tournament, that list is very good. The most broken AdMech lists are like truly heinous piles of nonsense. But if you just like scoop a bunch of AdMech models into a bag and show up to a tournament, like they're good. But if you just like bring a bunch of tanks and robots and tracked servitors, like those models are all above average, but none of them are like breaking the game. The really broken AdMech lists are pretty curated to be heinous nonsense, and they're not what the average AdMech player is bringing to lists. So I think those numbers are being brought down by people who are like, I want to bring a bunch of spider tanks and plasma servitors because those things are cool and they're not bad. Like I wouldn't even call them subpar because I think they're better than the models that other factions have access to. But they're certainly worse than like 60 Scutari and a bunch of infiltrators and a bunch of dogs and a bunch of las cannon chickens. They're just like, I have models charging you on turn 1 and also make 50 saves because I spent 2 command points, and also they're teleporting and transhuman can't use AP against them. They have 2 armor saves and they're covered. Like you could just do really, really stupid nonsense, and I think most armies are just completely unequipped to deal with what the broken AdMech lists are doing. And then what the not broken AdMech lists are doing are very strong and still beating a lot of people, but at least you have a game against it. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, amazingly, they made like what I imagine what a friend of mine's too has, like the old AdMech lists are just not where you want to be. So like you're literally rebuilding. I've seen multiple like in person like 27 servitors spam lists, and if you think about all the money you put into that, and it's literally just like don't bother playing it, it's terrible now. It does really
Yeah,
bring down.
I would push back and say it's not terrible. It's just not the best thing in the Codex.
Yeah, it's bad by comparison to what you could be doing with the Codex. That's fair. It's a
Yeah.
reasonable.
Chat's saying a lot of players are playing subpar models in AdMech and think that they're broken because a lot of players have bad union assessment. Yeah, some of it's that. I think a lot of it's just like people are like, I own AdMech and the new Codex is out, and I'd like to play the models I own. Because there's nothing. I don't think there's a bad model in that Codex. Like, I think the model I'm least excited about is like the Spider Tank, and it's still just a heinously efficient tank. It's like better than most factions' tank.
I'd love it in Space Marines.
Yeah, like most factions would be very excited to have that tank. So it's not like the models are bad. So if you're like an AdMech player and you look at your collection, you're like, yeah, it's just not the actual best thing ever, but there's literally nothing wrong with picking this up and going to a tournament with it because you can certainly compete with it. You'll do fine.
How much is the neutron laser variant?
It's like 120 points. It's D3 shots at 12, neg 4 D3 plus 3 on a T7 platform with a 5 up mortable save. Like, it's 12 points. Like, it's just great. It's just really good. And somehow, like, it's not good compared to the rest of the Codex, but, like, I don't know. I look at a Hammerhead and just like, why am I spending 60 points more for something with a third of the firepower and half the resilience? I don't understand. I don't get it.
It's funny. I'm just literally looking up the battle scribe. Remind myself how much a gladiator lancer costs. It's 180 points, and that's with it going 20 down 20 points. In the latest chapter approved.
Fucking yikes!
And that gets 2 shots. That's it. You do get T8, but you'd lose the invuln, which is I'd rather have the invuln.
Everyone would rather have the invuln. Yeah, chat's pointing out like AdMech's very spiky. The best models in the book are absurd, especially with like the specific combinations of like oh goodness, is it Lucius Lucius and all the warlord traits and stuff in Vanguard, which is like a thing that a lot of people start. And I think the big thing too is that like a lot of lists are just unprepared for that defensive profile, right? Like, what are the lists that can just like look at a unit of Vanguard that are fully buffed and be like, I can handle this? Like, do either of the armies you guys play have the ability to look at that brick and be like, I've thought about this and I can do something, or have you both given up? Because honestly, giving up in list construction to trying to beat that is not unreasonable. I don't hate just being like, AdMech's dumb. I'm gonna just build to beat other things and accept that I lose that matchup.
I kind of have a dreadnought that I put in my Iron Hands list that can do something about it, and that's like it can shoot at a non-buffed up unit, but if you're only throwing me a buffed up unit, even it can't do anything to that against that. I can throw a good amount of CP into help, but if you're ignoring AP 1 and 2, like
at least for my army, I'm kind of just playing the objectives and just hoping for the best. I mean, that's the Death Guard game plan anyway. But now I'm just like really crossing my fingers, hoping for shitty rolls on the other person's side.
So, yeah, because that unit's also upsec, so it can just like wander over and take objectives out from under you, though. So you're just like, hopefully I don't play AdMech, or do we just not have it? Like, which is fine. Like, it's absurd. I don't blame you for being like, I just don't have an answer to that unit. I was just like curious if you had one in your list.
No, like I got nothing.
Yeah.
So it's so weird because like we literally have just, and I know we explained why we think AdMech is a little bit lower win percentage than it should be, but it's like kind of crazy how it's like even with a Yokari with a 65% win rate, we feel like there's 67% win rate. We feel like there's a chance that there's a we can do something to like make that matchup a little bit better, and yet somehow with AdMech we don't. I find it interesting the difference in that, and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually like for like the stupid Talos I've been playing. I'm realizing one of the reasons I feel so okay with it is I just like have an answer to that unit. I actually can just like look at 20 fully buffed Skitarii and murder them. And that's just a tool that most armies don't have. And I still feel like the AdMech matchup is heinous for me. I can't even imagine how bad it would be if I was playing a list that just like looked at that and went, yeah, those 20 dudes are standing there, and next turn they're still going to be standing there with the exact same buffs on them thrown at them from across the table, and I'm dead.
Yeah, the only recourse I've noticed from my list, so the one time that I've played against like the Lucius AdMech disaster, I was able to make a pretty solid defense, and with my plague burst crawlers, just using the blast rule against this Yokari, which I mean it worked out pretty well because at least the mortar is like damage too, so they're not getting that +1 to their save and everything. And then I think now that I'm also packing a pair of Volkai Contemptors, I feel like I should be able to do something against it.
Yeah, Volkai Contemptors can hurt that unit, but they're certainly not going to kill it.
No, they're not. I think it's going to take both Contemptor Dreadnoughts and then like probably 2 out of the 3 tanks mortar shots. I'll probably have to burn a CP to just reroll the number of shots. Kevin, you're shaking your head.
I don't think that. I think the math says that doesn't.
That math's not good for you.
So you literally just talked about throwing what 32. If you actually get blasted, so you're throwing like 50 shots. Those 50 shots are like hitting on 3, so you're hitting like 35. You're only wounding with half of them, because they're transhuman physiology. I get there are some mortal wounds coming from the Volkite, but for argument's sake, let's just say you wound 17 times, and a lot of them they're still either getting you're not AP2, so they're getting a 3-up save, or if they are, they're at least getting their invuln save. The math just says you don't get through that 20-man unit with what you just said.
Yeah,
I mean, you do probably like half of it. You do probably like half it, which is okay, but that's about it.
Yeah, either way you slice it, there has to be a huge overcommitment on my part, like at least points wise, to try to match up.
Yeah. Let me talk about the 3 sort of up and comer lists into that real quick. I don't think Grey Knights have a chance because you can point as many Stormbolters as you want in the world at that unit, and you're going to kill none of them. I think it was like 10 Stormbolters kills 1, like, and your guys cost 22 points a model. The math's really bad for you.
It's not that bad now that you can't sack Lucius with cover, because they only get 1 turn of being like hyper resilient. And other than that, they're making 3-up saves, so you do. It's not great, but you do slowly whittle through better.
That's
you
right.
Double.
The real issue is that when they crack into you, it's 11 points per wound, and they're just wounding you on 5-ups to hit, and you're just bleeding points when they kill your infantry at that rate. There's something to be said for like, yeah, they have like mortal wounds and stuff, so like they are going to hurt that unit. But I think that overall, Grant's just too expensive for the speed at which they get murdered by AdMech to like actually have a chance in that matchup. Squigosaur's bosses are similarly like not particularly interesting in AdMech because they're very interested like murdering high value targets, and AdMech just like has a bunch of toughness 3 blobs that don't really care if a Squigosaur has to run across the table and like hit them. That being said, like Squig buggies are excellent against AdMech. So if AdMech can continue to be dominant, I do think there's like orc builds that do well against them. Although AdMech have a real chance of just pushing the kill rig out of the meta because the kill rig's a monster. So Vanguard just like actually kill a kill rig on their own. And then T-Suns I think actually just have a very reasonable matchup against AdMech. The hail of like strength 3, strength 4, 1 damage shots kind of just doesn't do anything to the Terminators. Like Vanguard like actually just bounce off of Terminators if that's like the target they pick. And same thing if it's a vehicle list. Well, like Vanguard are terrible against vehicles. And then on the crackback, Thousand Suns have a bunch of mortal wounds, which don't care about any of your defensive mechanics. Grey Knights have it too, but Thousand Suns have so many mortal wounds. And then Soul Reaper cannons are against an AdMech blob 10 shots at 6-3-1, which is like a pretty excellent profile against AdMech. Because your 1 damage isn't perfect, but 10 shots is a lot of shots, and then you're breaking past the Nor AP 1 and 2, and all of a sudden there's just like a bunch of dead Skitarii in front of you. And the tanks do similar things where they just like have a bunch of high AP shots. So I don't hate Thousand Suns matchup because I think AdMech don't have great firepower to point at Thousand Suns. So both armies might have like a real chance of like having models left on the table by turn 4, and then Thousand Suns are insane at secondaries. But I don't see Grey Knights really having a chance in the ad mech. What do you guys? Do you think I'm right,
I
wrong?
think you're right. So I think everything you said kind of perfectly summarizes it. I think we need to move on to other topics just
Yeah,
because we're.
sure.
So next up we have Harlequins. I think Harlequins just are very sad into psychic models, and now that we have Grey Knights and Thousand Sons who all can just like kind of smite Harlequins to death, it's really bad for them. I don't see them doing that well.
Yeah, there's like maybe a game against Grey Knights, but Thousand Suns just like 1,000 Sun Psyker kills like half a Harlequin's army over the course of 5 turns. It's abysmal. It's really really bad for them.
Haywire, is it strength 4?
I want to say it's 3. Look.
New is 3. Harlequin is strength 4.
Okay. I was thinking about how Harlequins felt into T5 orc bodies. Even their melee mostly goes up to strength 4, right? Like that's the common.
No, they're usually the popular weapon is 5-2-1.
Okay. So they can still have matchup against orcs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hill rigs might be hard. Toughness 8 monsters, I don't know if they have answers.
Fusion boat. Hope it works.
Oh, fusion boats just don't have the output that people want them to have. There's no rerolls anywhere.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're falling apart against Thousand Suns completely. Their matchup into Grey Knights is probably not good, and Orcs are going to be a struggle. So I expect to see them go down.
Now that being said, we've said kind of similar things about Harlequins in the past, and they continue to be here. So who knows?
Yeah. Good Harlequin players can kind of make them do whatever because this is also like the world where Harlequin players every game just end up with a bunch of bikes and melee with 1,000 Sun Psychers on turn 1 every game, and because that's just the thing they can do because they don't actually care where you put your models.
Yeah. Yep. Next up, we have Adeptus Sororitas with 55% win rate. Storm. I feel like Grey Knights actually are probably fine.
I think it's a good matchup for them.
For the Sisters or the Grey Knights?
For Sisters, I think Sisters have a very favorable Grey Knight matchup. So the fact that every model denies on a 5-up means that Grey Knights are going to really struggle.
Oh, I
actually,
completely forgot about that. Yeah,
they're going to really struggle to get their defensive debuffs up. And then Stormbolters are not particularly scary into them, and then Sisters are actually better at melee than Grey Knights are. So anytime a Grey Knight unit like moves out to, Sisters always get to trade up because every time a Grey Knight unit touches a Sister unit, that unit dies. Every time a Sister unit touches a Grey Knight unit, that unit dies. And the Sisters units are like a quarter of the cost. So it's just gonna be a trading game, and Sisters have so many more resources than Grey Knights.
I agree. This is a similar issue for Thousand Suns. Your psychers are going to feel somewhat bad. This is if you play the traditional, or I'm going to say air quotes, the traditional Thousand Suns list where you're a bunch of Rubric Marines and Terminators and.
Yeah, I think T-Suns have a better matchup than Grey Knights do because all the weapons have AP. Like the fact that you're pinging Stormbolters off of the armor in Grey Knights is really awkward, whereas Inferno Bolters just kind of murder Sisters like really good. Like a Sister in cover against Grey Knights is actually never dying, and a Sister in cover against Thousand Suns is just gone. Thousand Suns also have the advantage of all their powers that they care about against Sisters kind of do the same thing. They're just like all different versions of I'm going to do some mortal wounds to you. Whereas Grey Knights are kind of reliant on stacking buffs on their different units, and it's all a house of cards that can fall apart if like you pick 3 of these at random and they don't work. Whereas when Thousand Suns are like take 20 mortal wounds, and Sisters are like, no, I'm taking 15. Like that's still not good for Sisters. They are paying a fair amount per wound. So I think there's a matchup there, though I do agree it's one of the rougher ones for Thousand Suns. I think it's probably closer to 50-50.
Yeah, that being said, I feel like your vehicle Thousand Suns are. It's a little bit awkward if you can get the Retributors killed. I think you're pretty good.
Yeah, once your Retributors go down, the vehicle Thousand Suns list is just basically as free reign. And I think Orcs are. I don't think Orcs have a chance against Sisters. The kill rig list does nothing. Like kill rigs just actually are a joke into your attributors.
I mean, is there a chance that we just think kill rigs are bad?
There's a chance that we think kill rigs are bad, in which case it's a bunch of buggies.
Because we've literally just said the top 5 factions and we haven't been happy with kill rigs.
That's fair. All right, so then all right, let's pretend orcs are a bunch of buggies because that's like probably the good list. I'm a little bit less excited about a bunch of buggies in the sisters because sisters have charge ranges that make indirect fire a lot less exciting. Like a bunch of Zephyrim can just like move 24 inches across the table into a unit of squig buggies behind wall and kill all of them. So we'll see how that goes. I think there's a game there. I don't think either side is like wildly favored. So I don't know that either of them are gonna get shaked up particularly. But sisters might be like the thumb that keeps Grey Knights down because I think that matchup is probably miserable for Grey Knights.
Yeah. Next up, we have Deathwatch.
Ooh.
What are your thoughts on Deathwatch? First off, what's their win rate?
55%. Or 54.5.
Not bad.
Yeah. All the Deathwatch lists have actually been very different, which is interesting, but it also makes it hard to talk about them. I haven't actually seen a consistent Deathwatch when I...
So the last thing I remember about Deathwatch is that they're generally speaking very good at killing infantry. Is that still true, or are we wildly different from that now?
Still good at killing infantry. Okay.
All right.
Number of extra. So we do... So... Just taking a look. Librarian, Primaris Captain with nowhere to hide. Primaris Tech Marine. Old skill kill team with the biker kill team. Second biker kill team.
So generally speaking, that makes me feel like they're going to have a really good Grey Knights matchup because Grey Knights, again, super squishy for their point costs. Like they're not squishy. Like they're T3 with 2 wounds each, T4, 3 up armor, 2 wounds each. But like if you're playing against an army that specializes in killing infantry, you're paying 22 points a model that aren't like custodies, like that, you might just like be dying way too fast to actually be able to play the game. Especially when Grey Knights are kind of interested in murdering things in melee. So like every time you fail a charge, you're just losing a unit for nothing. How's the Thousand Sun matchup, do you think?
All right. So taking a look at this 5-0 list, I have now... I'm going to summarize it real quick. So we have a librarian to make a big kill team squad very hard to kill with a particular psychic power. This automatically makes this list very bad against Thousand Suns because a single librarian just means you get Raft and Magnus off the board.
No, you're so right.
That unless we're not playing with faction secondaries, which is awkward because how did we discuss that? A Primaris captain whose goal is to stand around 2 Redemptor Dreadnoughts and 2 Relic Contemptor Dreadnoughts and give them a 5-up invuln. And also ignore cover for certain units. Then Primaris Tech Marine, who's a Muscular Forge to heal and use the Tome of Ectoclades to get a bunch of rerolls with the Volkite Dreadnoughts once. We then have 3 units of old veteran kill teams who are going to split into some combination of biker plus Vanguard vets or Vanguard vets plus bikers that are pretty melee choppy. We actually have put power swords on our bikers, so our bikers can actually go into the Admech blobs and actually slice them up because they pay 3.
Oh, okay. I get it. So is this keep a power swords on all the bikers?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So yeah, that's a real answer to that, Nick, then.
Keep in mind, so we are veteran bikers, so it's going to be 3 attacks per.
So 3 on the charge?
Yeah.
All right.
And we have some lightning claws and some of the Vanguard vets are all going to have lightning claws and storm shields. The lightning claws can be AP3 because Deathwatch can just A, they can just be in the assault doctrine, and B, can also just spend a command point to put something in the assault doctrine.
Yeah, this list seems sweet. Yeah, I'm still on. Grey Knights are probably in a lot of trouble. How does this do against orcs? Like a bunch of orc buggies. It probably has a bad time. I think this list is a really bad time against a bunch of squig buggies. Like here's a bunch of indirect AP 2 damage shots at strength 5.
So against that list, what you can do is actually keep the units together because you're not trying to outspeed that list. And then once you lose a single Deathwatch veteran, the entire unit becomes strength 5. So you're like losing regular veterans.
Ooh, okay, that's something.
Oh, we've also decided to use all Deathwatch shotguns. I still don't understand. All right, so a Deathwatch shotgun has some interesting interesting options, but I, running the math, I've always liked the Deathwatch bolt gun plus the Astartes chainsword at the same point cost. I wish I had my Deathwatch Codex to compare and contrast those two a few because I still don't understand why people play the Deathwatch shotgun over that combo, but
So the short version is though, right? Like this is anti-infantry. You have some pretty interesting ways of getting highly mobile obsec units that are toughness 5. So we're pretty good at playing the mission. Those infantry units can move like bikers, but phase through walls like infantry and do actions like infantry, and have AP 3 melee for beating up Skitari. So there's like a little bit of everything that this unit can do.
yeah. And
yeah,
we can make them some units hyper resilient. My my question to you is, what do orc players in this buggy list put on objectives? Because there's a real chance that the Deathwatch list just actually looks at everything you put on an objective and just says, "I'm blasting that off. Your buggies have to come out."
So things like death copters, direct fire buggies, namely the scrapjet.
Okay.
And then I don't think it's boys. I think boys are probably just like not in this list.
Okay.
I think like everything's just like T6 with like 5 wounds.
Okay.
Yeah, I was playing against a list that was like all vehicles, and granted, this was a doubles, so you know it wasn't the most like competitive venue, but as Rob says in chat, you know, he just used the bases and everything to just box me and my partner out.
Well, yeah, you're probably not killing that many T6 vehicles in your turn. But it could be interesting. All right.
You can, but then there's still just like a whole shitload of them. It's a lot to get through.
Yeah, I don't know the Deathwatch. I don't see the introduction of Orcs, Thousand Sons, or Grey Knights wildly changing where Deathwatch is. I think it's like good versus Grey Knights, bad versus T-Sons, probably about equal versus Orcs, and I don't think that moves them significantly. What do you think, Kevin? You're a Deathwatch expert.
I agree.
Okay, cool. By the way, we've thought Grey Knights were good against Dark Eldar, right? Or did we think that was bad too?
I thought it was 50-50.
Okay, so Grey Knight, because we've kind of been like Grey Knights are bad against this, Grey Knights are bad against that, which is wild to me because Grey Knights seem like a very strong codex.
No, I think Grey Knights they're slightly better than Marines because they do a little bit more damage before they die, but they kind of get abused in similar ways to what Marines do right now, where
that's right.
It's a trading game, but all their units are expensive. And Grey Knights in theory are more expensive, but can sometimes get some trades that like the Marine player would not be able to get. All right, moving on. We have Iron Hands, so Dreadnought heavy lists.
Lots of vehicles.
Lots of vehicles.
The Land Raider Achilles.
Yep. I've been a big fan of my version because it gets to have a pretty free secondary with While We Stand We Fight, and it gets to play this long range game that not a lot of lists are prepared to play.
Feels like good Tau, to be honest. without the indirect.
Yeah, that indirect matters a lot, though.
That's fair, but being actually resilient and independent of your own models is like pretty nice.
Mm-hmm. I've liked my matchup in theory into. I liked my matchup into Thousand Suns. And I liked my matchup. I think would also into Grey Knights. The Grey Knight Steep Strike.
I think that Grey Knights being interested in meleeing you could be a little awkward, not because they're gonna like crush you in melee, but because they're charging a bunch of obstacle bodies onto objectives that you're holding with dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Against T-Suns, yeah. I think it depends on what the T-Suns lists end up looking like. But yeah, the matchup there is probably pretty good. And yeah, I think we've all talked ourselves out of the kill rig because I'm doing it again. The kill rig's terrible here. The buggy list is also probably not good into this list.
Yep.
I think this is like an orc crusher.
All right. Just to know, Iron Hands was a 54% rate. It's worth noting that our top 3 factions were in the 60 plus range or the 65 plus range. We then just talked about 5 factions that were at a 55% win rate. They're about 55, 54. And we're now dropping another 4% into a bunch of factions that are like the 50% win rate. So it's kind of like the easy S tier, A tier, B tier discussion here.
Yeah, and then everything after these factions to support a 70% win rate on some of the other factions are abysmal. Like they're just very bad. So I don't know if we need to talk because I don't think the introduction of new factions into the meta are going to bring any of them up.
Yeah, I can't. Okay, so the next list we have is at 50. It's actually at 51 is Chaos Demons.
And this is usually a bunch of big idiots. Like my understanding, the Chaos Demon list I've been seeing being successful, both local meta and also like bigger places, is some Slanesh attachment to turn on advance and charge for all of your Slanesh demons. Oftentimes now Be'lakor, so he can advance and charge, and then like a bunch of huge monsters.
Basically, yeah.
I don't think that Legion of Be'lakor has been doing much, but I could be wrong. Grey Knights are going to smash demons to pieces, like actually to pieces. They have a free 15-point secondary against them. It's joke. It's like 5 points for every greater demon you kill, and you just get to stack that with Abhor the Witch for like even more points, or not Abhor the Witch. No, sorry, it takes the same slot as Assassinate. But anyway, yeah, you can take that. You just like circle your 15. You're done with that. And they also have a bunch of rules that make them better against demons. So like that's sort of a no-brainer. I think in a very similar vein, Thousand Suns are going to annihilate demons because they're going to smite every turn. They're going to smite the biggest greater demon to death, and then they're going to look at the next one furthest away, and they're going to go, you don't have an invulnerable save, you can't counter the spell, and then they're going to shoot their entire army at this toughness 7 model with no save, and that model is going to die. And what's up?
So Grey Knights, they still have a little bit of anti-demon going on, but to my understanding, it's been super toned back.
It has been toned down.
Like you have to be like in a certain tide, right? So you're like, it's like reroll hits and wound rolls of 1, which is like good, but not like you're giving up like a tide. So it's like,
yeah, it's not as ridiculous as it used to be. There's still some of their named characters still have special rules against demons, and their named characters are very good, so they're still going to see play. But yeah, it's less extreme. But the other thing is like a bunch of Storm Bolters is like good against greater demons.
Yeah, that's awkward.
Like, the weapons also just like match up well against demons. Which I guess makes sense.
So the point I was more actually trying to make is, while you're right, the Storm Bolters aren't bad. The demons still have 3 CP. One of my units is back.
Oh, you're not wrong. I didn't go. I didn't.
No.
I take it back. The Green Knight versus Demon matchup's real interesting. Hmm.
And yeah, I took a look at some of the lists. It seemed like it was mostly the big demons list. There was one that was like just hordes of demons, which looked pretty cool, but that was like 1 of 4. So, and it also had the worst record. So that doesn't matter.
It should be noted that that stratagem is 2 command points.
Whatever.
Doesn't work on Be'lakor, but it does work on your Big Lord of Change and all that other stuff. So yeah, that's gross.
Wasn't there some question on whether or not Be'lakor turns off demon loci or something?
No, he has all 4 keywords. He keeps them on.
Okay.
Yeah. Also of note for that stratagem, it brings the unit back as it was. So if you murder the indestructible Lord of Change, he comes back with that relic and warlord trait. It's just the same model. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. I'm off of Grey Knights having a reusable demon matchup. They're actually just going to put that guy in front of their army, and you're going to have to kill the 3-up invulnerable save -1 damage taken Lord of Change 4 times over the course of the game. And that's not a real game. All right. Never mind. Grey Knights have a bad demon matchup because
You know what I want to see?
Oh man.
Is the Bloodthirster with the axe that's another Bloodthirster, and like you kill the
Oh no. The tech, if Grey Knights are ever good, you're just like it's here's this Bloodthirster, you can't kill it, because if you do, more Bloodthirsters.
Man. So right now you could technically go to a tournament with only bringing 1 Bloodthirster, but like if you were to go, if you know Grey Knights are part of your meta, is it like mandatory you start bringing second Bloodthirster for this matchup?
Absolutely, it is.
Bring the second Bloodthirster, and like you're like Iron Hands opponent looks at you and is like, you don't have any summoning points, right? Why do you have the second Bloodthirster? You're like, don't worry about it, man. Round 2.
Shenanigans.
I didn't even think of that. That's hilarious. Okay. Also, I think that the Grey Knight anti-demon thing where they get 5 points for every greater demon they kill only works with the demon set at the end of the game, which means that if you kill that Lord of Change 4 times, you get 0 points, and that's okay. Yeah, all right. So Grey Knights have like a terrible win rate against demons. Jesus. I think. I do think Thousand Suns are crushing demons. The orc list is interesting.
Rob, to answer your question, it's a relic that is okay. You if you bring 3 Bloodthirsters, you could in theory get 3 extra Bloodthirsters, Rob, but the odds of that happening are so slim. Also, I still think this is.
Don't you just put them on the table and charge them into a bunch of paladins and then go, I'm going to take these saves on my armor? 2 CP, I have another Bloodthirster every time? You can't not attack. I'm going to take this guy and shove him into your most damaging unit every turn.
You're hurting me, Ben.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Okay, then. Ridiculous 8th edition rules aside. Or.
Weeds.
So the Prehistoric boss is actually the one who just like super trades up in this matchup?
Yes. Yep. The Prehistoric boss is like very happy in this matchup because he gets to like run into things and all this trade up. I think everything else in the Orc list is a little scared of everything the Demon list is doing. So I could go either way on this one.
Yeah. If people are actually bringing kill rigs, the kill rig's also very good.
Yes, this is the matchup where the kill rig's good. We found it. We only had to go down 6 factions.
Man, like the only thing I can say about our previous comments on the kill rigs is like we're saying it's bad because it dies, but it's also like very cheap. So even if it, I don't know, like very cheap is strong, but
it's 168. But yeah, like it reads as a broken unit because it probably is, and then you just look at the top meta and you're like, oh right, they actually don't care about things that are not infantry. Like if it's like this infantry, like you're not a vehicle, like your toughness is irrelevant. You're paying all these points for T8. It's garbage, and that feels bad.
Yeah. So after Chaos Demons, we have Chaos Space Marines. I just think so. These Chaos Space Marines, unless I was trying to find one, it was like an Iron Hands,
Iron Warriors.
corn marked. Sorry, Iron Warriors. Corn marked using that special corn relic from demons to do silly things.
So I think just to save time, because we could go through the rest of the meta, but we're below 50% here now, right?
Chaos Space Marines are 51.
Okay. I think we're starting to reach our questionable armies, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to go through every single one of these, because I think anything weaker than Chaos Demons, you're probably just looking at weaker armies or people who are very good with the army. Chaos Space Marines just kind of like make me sad, and everything else being weaker than them is really awkward.
Yeah.
Chris, I want to note something.
What's up?
We got to Chaos Space Marines before we got to Death Guard. Be sad.
I'm not impressed with Death Guard in the current meta. I just don't think they do the thing.
They're still putting up solid. They're still putting up showings in top 8s and top 4s, but it's been a long while since they actually like took a top spot.
They have actually no game against Yokari or Admech though, and that's crippling in the current meta.
It is, yeah. So it's you're basically like in a 5 or 6 round GT, like you can dodge it for like maybe like 3 or 4 rounds, but once you're gonna get to a point where you can't dodge that matchup anymore, and then that's gonna be the reason why you're top 4, top 8, and not top 1.
Yeah. But that is I think right, we're all more or less in the same place. So, like that's the current meta, and we kind of said what we think are going to move around. Do you want to just like recap real quick, Kevin? What do you think our newest additions are going to do to shake up the top of the meta? Oh, first of all, are we shaking up the top of the meta, or is it still just like Yokari and Admech sitting on everyone else?
It's Yokari and Admech sitting on everyone else. You might see some percentages get dragged down a little bit, because some of these factions were in the bottom 50%, and they're probably not going to be below 50% now. So, like, congratulations, we're no longer at a 67% win rate. We might be at a 65% win rate to accommodate them moving up a little bit.
Hooray.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Orcs, G-Suns, and Grey Knights are in the top half of the meta, but yeah, they're not close to our menaces. Is anyone getting booted? Like any of our top factions, just like
Harlequins.
I agree.
Yeah. If these books actually see a reasonable amount of play.
Yeah,
in particular, the psychic ones.
Yeah, if T-Suns is like 1% of the meta or like 0.5% of the meta, Harlequins will just be fine because, like, yeah, you'll lose your 0.5% of the games you play against T-Suns, but like whatever. I also think they have a bad. I think they have a bad orc matchup too. Like they're gonna really struggle to kill a lot of things in the orc codex. Their weapons just don't line up well. And then we don't think anyone's jumping, right? Like no current faction is going to get better by the inclusion of this, or do we think maybe Sisters? I think Sisters is the one faction that like just has the potential to have a very positive matchup against all 3 of our new codexes. Like I think their potential worst matchup of their new 3 codexes is 1,000 Suns, and it's not like a bad matchup. Like I think it's 50-50 at worst.
I don't know, man. Agents of the Imperium with multiple Sisters Silence Vanguards. It's just gonna crush 1,000 Suns.
I don't see that list being successful against like anything else, but that's sure.
I don't even think
the meta.
I actually, to be honest, I actually don't even think they have a good matchup against them, because like even if you like remove all 1,000 Suns psychic phase, if you're spending 12 points on a T3 model with a bolt gun into a
Rubric Marine,
you're trading down.
Yeah, 2 up armor with AP2 on the gun. Yeah, it's a bad time to be a sister. It's fair. How do we feel about the meta? Like, is it
still terrible?
Yeah, still terrible.
It's
Yokari feels better. The play against than AdMech. I can't explain why. It just
because you get to have models on the table by turn 4.
that's because like it's not just like somebody rolling dice and then you're just like, all right, I'm gonna go home now.
I understand the irony of me saying this, but AdMech have a very unhealthy play style of just blowing you off the table and scoring the points later. But for them, blowing you off the table is like turn 3. You picked them up. And even when it's not turn 3, they're so fast, so mobile, have so many forward deploying, scout moving, teleporting units that it's not unusual to have them, if they go first, be on every objective that wasn't in your deployment zone, and even some of those.
Yeah. The Yokari is very insinuous that you think you're playing a fair trading game, and then all of a sudden you get to like your final unit trades and you look over, they still have like an entire another wave, and you're like, oh, I was losing this game, I just didn't know it.
Yeah, you're playing like a reasonable trading game, and you're like, all right, like I got like my like last like 5 intercessors on the center objective, and then you're like, all right, what's left in your boats? And like 30 witches. Like, oh, all right, cool. We weren't playing a real game. Interestingly, I'm having fun playing in this meta. I do think their top 2 factions are like garbage powerful, but it's still diverse. Like it wasn't the Castellan meta where the Castellan is just like half of the armies and is crushing everything else under its boot, and everyone's just running that.
Well, that was an easy meta to hop in on because you just needed to buy one model, basically. Most people, I would have the other models already.
Yeah, I have Space Marines and a little bit of Guard, and I need to buy a Castellan. Easy.
Yeah, for sure. And more interestingly too is we have like a lot of factions that are hovering at 50 or above. So yeah, AdMech and Yokari are busted, but there's like plenty of people who own armies. Like I don't know, if you own a Sisters army right now, you're not miserable. Like you're like, yeah, my win rate is like fine.
Yeah, it's not like there's AdMech Yokari like at their 60 plus win rate, and then everybody else is like floundering at like 40, 45. That's just
because there's not enough of the meta to push everyone that far down. That being said, I think GW has a lot of work to do to actually balance this meta. Like an unbelievable amount of work to do.
Like, but what did they do? Is it so? You just fix Yokari by just like literally just putting a point, or do they apply their early 9th edition spreadsheet to Yokari?
All right. Well, so even on top of that, right? Let's pretend they're like, all right, Yokari's busted, AdMech's busted. Let's push them all down like to 55% win rate. I think then you have a meta that's probably completely overrun by like Sisters and Harlequins, right? Because like if Sisters and Harlequins are in the mid 50s in a meta with guys in the 70s, like those armies are probably also unhealthy. It's just very hard to tell that they're unhealthy because we have 2 complete tyrants smashing everyone.
Yeah.
But if they're able to maintain those numbers in a meta with a 70% win rate army, like they're probably also not okay for the meta. GW, I'm not telling you to nerf Sisters. Do not nerf Sisters until you fix the other 2, because my goodness, we don't need fewer predators for Yokari. We need more predators for Yokari. But
I don't think predators are that good against Yokari.
All right. Haha. Space Marines. It's funny. That being said, no,
I'd only played those in Thousand Suns.
Oh man, you're not wrong. Thousand Suns Predators also not good against Yokari, but better than all the other ones. You've completely train wrecked my train of thought. All right. The point is, I think that even once GW fixes our like 2 really aberrant armies, they still have an extraordinarily unbalanced meta, and it's going to take a very long time to untangle the damage that AdMech and Yokari have done to the balance of the rest of the books, the way people are building the rest of the books, because they are completely warping the meta right now. And so there's also things like the kill rig. Like, I don't know, maybe the kill rig's actually just like a busted model, but because the 2 best factions have excellent games against it, we might not find that out for like 3 years. It wouldn't shock me if 3 years from now, like AdMech and Yokari are fixed, and all of a sudden we're like some orc player just like goes on a tear with like some 3 kill rig, 3 hunter rig list, because it turns out that model is completely busted but was unplayable into the old meta. I just think like we have an unbelievable amount of work to do to fix this, and GW is just not going fast enough because they just keep releasing new things instead of fixing the old stuff.
Well, it just seems like their game plan is just like, let's get all the 9th edition stuff out and hope that that's a balanced meta. But we already know that, like, unless they like buff Space Marines, buff Death Guard, those books are just bad. Buff Necrons.
Yeah, the Death Guard, Space Marines, and Necrons are just not good books. Like they're just really weak.
We're still seeing top 4s for those 3 armies, though.
Barely, but they're never going to come close to being competing with. We're seeing top 4s when they dodge Yokari, or they get to the top table against Yokari and then get completely heinously smashed.
Yeah, I mean, like an 8-round major. I don't. They will not win.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not beating top players on Admech or Yokari, and they're not coming close to beating top players on Admech or Yokari. So I don't think we can make any sort of argument that they're balanced or functional in their current iteration. Those books just need buffs. Even if we're going to marry the ideology of never touching 8th edition Codex unless it's winning things, which is a terrible ideology, but this is the world we live in. Look, we just need to buff those 3 books. They need to get better because they are not competing, and they're literally never going to compete.
Well, it's certain things need buffs too. It's like Space Marines don't need their Dreadnoughts buff. Their Dreadnoughts are completely fine based on what we're seeing in the meta. It's like Intercessors. Like, they're bad now.
Space Marine infantry is terrible. It all feels bad.
And then any non-Dreadnought tank feels also terrible. So, like,
the turret tanks all feel gross. All right, well, that was a lot of
I can't convince you to play Infinite Lancers.
Correct. All right, that was a lot of doom and gloom. Do we have any bright spots in the meta before we hop off?
If you'd like a casual tournament event coming soon to South County Game Nights,
you can join this casual doubles tournament in Wakefield, Rhode Island, where the meta doesn't really matter because it's a doubles. You can make your dreams come true with Gene Stealer cults.
Or you could play Admech and Yokari on the same team and smash everyone.
Good.
I will not.
Or you can have fun.
You do that.
And I'm not running it, so it's not my problem. Do it. Crush Kevin's streams.
In all honesty, I'm going to repost the link just in case we had some latecomers. But also, the tournament is going to be what has been defined as a I'm going to say the words again, but a casual tournament. A casual tournament is first and foremost a tournament, meaning that like you're going to be bringing a list with the goal of winning. The casual talked about the spirit of the game. So like, let's say for instance, you're playing against Death Guard and they're not rapid firing with their guns all the time because they don't know about malicious volleys and their chapter tactic. You should inform them because it's a casual event and we're all just trying to get better. Just want to clarify that. If that type of event sounds interesting to you, please come on down.
Right.
This was not our positive note with the meta I was trying to get to, but yeah, this event's been a lot of fun. People have enjoyed it in the past. I'm sad that I'm going to be missing it, but don't let me not being there stop you from going. So try and make it down if you can.
You have a much greater chance of winning because he's not coming. Come on down.
True.
That's not wrong. All right, yeah, so we did do a lot of doom and gloom at the end, so I just want to reiterate, I am having fun in the current meta. The fact that it's pretty diverse, you don't know what you're going to run up against. There's lots of different lists. Even the top tier of armies have some amount of diversity in their builds, so it is not, at least you're not playing as the exact same copy-pasted list over and over, even at the top tables. Our local meta, I think, in New England is excellent. I've really enjoyed seeing all the different things that people are bringing to local tournaments. So if you haven't been going out to local RTTs, I highly suggest you do. There's some really cool guys out there, a lot of cool lists, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Like to Thank my contributors for this episode, Kevin Leib and Benjamin Rubenstein. This has been the 3D6 Charge Podcast. Bye for now. Don't roll any ones. And I don't know if I'll actually be back in time next week for the podcast since I'm driving home on Monday. But if I end up having COVID, we'll be here next week.
Oh no! All right. Well, I tried to end on a positive note, but Chris ruined it. So we will see you either next week or the week after that. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye.